The evening air was sharp, a crisp reminder that October had arrived, yet inside our apartment, the warmth of anticipation hung thick. I had spent the morning carefully selecting flowers, the kind she loved, white lilies with a hint of pink, and set the table with her favorite china. Candlelight flickered across the polished surface, and a small box, wrapped in delicate paper, waited beside her plate. Our anniversary. 5 years. 5 years of laughter, arguments, compromises, and love that had, until now, felt unshakable. I smiled to myself, imagining her reaction, imagining the look of surprise as she walked through the door. But when my phone buzzed at precisely 6:30, my heart sank before I even read the message. "Hey, I won't make it tonight. Boss invited me to a dinner. Don't worry, we can celebrate another time." I stared at the screen, my fingers tightening around the phone until the edges pressed into my palm. I read it again. "Don't worry." Those 2 little words stung more than any argument we'd ever had. Don't worry. As if my feelings were insignificant, as if our anniversary, the one night a year we set aside to celebrate us, was nothing more than an inconvenience. I tried calling her immediately. No answer. Her voicemail picked up, cheerful, dismissive. My chest tightened with a mix of disbelief and rage. I paced the apartment, the lilies beginning to droop under the candlelight, their fragrance mingling with the growing knot of dread in my stomach. 5 years. 5 years of mornings and nights, of shared jokes, of loyalty. And tonight I was alone. I poured myself a glass of wine, trying to steady my shaking hands. My mind raced. Maybe it's not what I think. Maybe it's just a work thing. But deep down I knew. Deep down, I felt the cold whisper of betrayal brushing against my soul. I had tried to talk about boundaries, about what was appropriate and what wasn't. Subtle flirtations at work, late-night texts she laughed off as friendly. All those little red flags now pointed to a truth I had been terrified to face. By 7 o'clock, I had made a decision. Not a hasty one, but deliberate, calm, cold. If she thought she could disregard us, disregard me without consequence, she was wrong. Tonight I would leave. Not with anger, not with shouting, but with a silence that would echo in her mind long after the night ended. I packed a bag with the essentials, leaving a note on the kitchen counter. My handwriting was neat, precise, betraying none of the turmoil in my chest. I hoped tonight would be different. I hoped you would choose us. Since you chose something else, I am choosing myself. Goodbye. I left the apartment quietly, careful not to knock over the candles, careful not to disturb the life we had built together. Outside, the city hummed with its usual nighttime rhythm. Cars, distant laughter, the murmur of people unaware of the small, private devastation unfolding in a quiet apartment above the street. I drove aimlessly, letting the darkness consume me, letting the silence of the car match the void that had opened inside me. Memories of her laughter, the way her eyes sparkled when she told a story, the late nights we spent wrapped in blankets on the couch, all collided with the image of her in that message, smiling for someone else, her mind elsewhere, her loyalty misplaced. It wasn't immediate. Betrayal, I realized, didn't strike like a physical wound. It crept in, slow, insidious, gnawing at the edges of every memory, every assumption. I remembered our first date, the nervous way she had laughed when I spilled coffee on myself, the promise I had whispered under a sky painted with fireworks. "I will protect you, always." And now, all of it felt like a lie. By midnight, I was parked near the river, the city lights reflecting in the water, fractured like my thoughts. I thought about calling her, sending one last plea, one last desperate hope that it was all a misunderstanding. But the truth was undeniable. She had chosen someone else over me, over us, over our shared history. And I knew, with a clarity that made my chest ache, that I could no longer be a part of a life where my heart was optional. The next morning I returned to the apartment, not to beg or scream, but to reclaim what I could. I packed the remnants of my life into boxes. Clothes, books, memories neatly folded and stacked. I didn't touch her things. That was her burden to carry. I left the note where she would find it, a quiet testament to the choice she had made. When she walked in later that afternoon, The apartment smelled faintly of lilies and candle wax, empty and cold. Her eyes widened, the color draining from her face when she saw the boxes by the door, my absence unmistakable. Where are you going?" she asked, her voice trembling, the confidence of last night replaced by uncertainty. "I'm going," I said softly, letting the words hang in the air like smoke. "You made your choice. I'm making mine." She tried to reach for me, tried to explain, to apologize, to justify, but the sound of her words fell into a vacuum, swallowed by the emptiness I had created around myself. I didn't argue. I didn't plead. I just walked out, and for the first time in years, I felt a strange, liberating calm. Over the following weeks, the realization of what had happened settled in layers, each one sharper than the last. I learned that the dinner she had chosen over our anniversary wasn't innocent. Texts, messages, small indiscretions I had once excused as harmless now painted a vivid picture of betrayal. I wasn't naive. I had been blinded by hope, by love, by the illusion that what we had could withstand everything. Friends reached out, offering sympathy and advice, but their words felt distant. Pain, I realized, wasn't something that could be shared or diluted. It was a solitary journey, a test of resilience. I moved into a small apartment nearby. One room, one bed, one life rebuilt slowly and deliberately. Each day, I reminded myself that I had done the right thing. Not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Betrayal doesn't just break trust. It shatters identity. And I refused to let myself be broken. Months passed, and the ache dulled, not vanished, but softened. I discovered the strange freedom of absence. The way nights could be mine, the way mornings could start without dread. I met new people, friends who saw me for who I was, not who I had been to someone else. I laughed again, cautiously at first, then fully, without guilt. Then, one evening months after the silent departure that had changed everything, I received a message from her. I made a mistake. Can we talk?" I stared at the screen, the words almost comical in their simplicity, in their audacity. The woman who had chosen her boss over our love now reached out, hoping for a second chance. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Part of me wanted to respond, to fall back into the familiar patterns of forgiveness, of love, of habit. But another stronger part of me, the part that had rebuilt, that had found strength in absence, knew better. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Silence, I realized, was the most powerful response. It was a boundary she had crossed, a lesson she had failed to learn. And in that silence, I reclaimed the dignity she had tried to erode. Life moved on. I didn't dwell on what was lost, nor did I romanticize the pain. I accepted it, processed it, and transformed it into wisdom. I learned to cherish myself, to demand respect, to recognize that love without loyalty is nothing but a hollow echo. One day, walking through the park, I saw a couple laughing on a bench, hands intertwined, eyes bright with connection. I smiled genuinely at the beauty of love that was whole, unbroken, and mutual. And I knew that one day maybe I would find it again, not as a replacement, but as a true reflection of what I had learned. That love worth keeping never asks you to choose someone else over your heart. The apartment, the flowers, the memories, they all faded into the background of my life, like a storm that had passed. And I survived not because I was strong, but because I chose to leave when it mattered most, because I refused to accept a betrayal that would have cost me everything. She may remember that night, the dinner, the silent exit, for the rest of her life. But I will remember it differently. Not as a wound, but as the moment I reclaimed myself, when I learned that love is not possession but respect, that absence can speak louder than words, and that sometimes the most powerful act of love is to walk away.